When news broke that Rob Reiner had passed away, Hollywood expected what it always expects in moments like this: grief, tributes, and quiet reflection. Instead, what followed was something far darker. Within days, the Reiner family's longtime attorney released the final will. On paper, it should have offered closure, a clean ending, a chance for a grieving family to mourn in private. But that's not what happened. Almost immediately, whispers began to circulate. Confusion turned into disbelief. Disbelief turned into outrage. This wasn't a peaceful transfer of legacy. It felt like the opening move in a storm no one had prepared for. Because as details of the will surfaced, it became clear that this document wasn't designed to unite the family. It was about to expose every crack that had been quietly forming for years. This wasn't just a will, it was a trigger. What shocked people wasn't just that the will existed, it was what was inside it. According to multiple sources close to the estate, the largest share of the fortune, estimated at nearly $200 million, was left to Nick Reiner, the son long viewed by insiders as the most unstable and unpredictable member of the family. In a city obsessed with patterns, this decision made no sense. Nick had struggled for years with addiction, mental health issues, and failed attempts to find stability, while his siblings had quietly built independent lives. Yet Rob and Michelle Reiner reportedly believed Nick was the one who needed protection the most. Friends later revealed that the decision wasn't driven by favoritism, but fear. Fear that without financial security, Nick wouldn't survive on his own. To the public, however, the optics were explosive. Why would parents leave the majority of their life's work to the child least equipped to handle it? Was this an act of unconditional love, or the first sign that something had already gone terribly wrong behind closed doors? As outrage spread, legal experts quickly pointed to one rule that should have ended the conversation instantly: California's so-called Slayer statute. The law is simple and brutal. Anyone who intentionally causes the death of the person they stand to inherit from is treated, legally, as if they died first. No inheritance, no exceptions. And at first glance, that seemed to seal Nick's fate. But then came the twist that reignited the fire. Sources revealed that Nick Reiner had been formally diagnosed with a mental disorder years earlier. And under California law, intent is everything. If a defense team can successfully argue that a person was not mentally competent at the time of the act, the Slayer statute may not apply at all. Suddenly, the law meant to protect justice became a potential escape hatch. The question shifted overnight. This was no longer just about guilt or innocence. It was about whether mental illness could legally override moral responsibility, and whether a loophole buried deep in the system could allow a man accused of destroying his family to still walk away with their fortune. As the legal loophole became public, the conversation took a darker turn. People weren't just asking how the law applied anymore. They were asking when Nick might have known about the will itself. Insiders began whispering that the document hadn't been written recently, but nearly 2 years before the tragedy. That detail alone changed everything. If Nick knew the contents in advance, if he understood that he stood to inherit the overwhelming majority of his parents' fortune, then the timeline suddenly felt disturbing. Online forums exploded with speculation. Commentators questioned whether desperation, addiction, and financial fear could have collided into something far more calculated. Had Nick already seen his future written in ink before his parents ever died? And if so, did that knowledge sit quietly in the back of his mind, shaping decisions no one could take back? What began as sympathy slowly morphed into suspicion. Because once people believe someone knew the ending of the story early, every action leading up to it starts to look different. Then came the moment that froze Hollywood in place. On December 14, 2025, police were called to the Reiner family's Brentwood mansion, a quiet, affluent neighborhood known more for privacy than headlines. By the end of the day, the news was everywhere. Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle had been found lifeless inside their home. Within hours, shock turned into disbelief when authorities confirmed that their son, Nick Reiner, had been taken into custody in connection with their deaths. Sirens, camera crews, and reporters flooded the street as the story spread like wildfire. Fans struggled to process how a family so publicly defined by love and loyalty could end this way. But as devastating as the crime itself was, another question immediately stole the spotlight. With Rob Reiner gone, and Nick now at the center of a criminal investigation, who would inherit the massive fortune left behind? The tragedy didn't just end lives. It detonated a legal and emotional war that was only beginning. With Nick in custody and the investigation unfolding in real time, the focus shifted almost immediately from grief to inheritance. Rob Reiner had 4 children: Nick, Romy, Jake, and Tracy. And under normal circumstances, the division of his estate might have followed a predictable path. But nothing about this situation was normal. The fortune itself was enormous, built from decades of film royalties, real estate, and investments tied to one of Hollywood's most successful careers. As legal analysts stepped in, one thing became clear. Until the courts determined what role Nick played in his parents' deaths, the entire estate was effectively frozen in uncertainty. Every dollar, every property, every royalty check now hung in limbo. And behind the scenes, tensions were already rising among the siblings, each quietly realizing that this wasn't just about mourning their parents anymore. It was about survival, fairness, and who would control a legacy that suddenly felt cursed. Just when the story seemed unable to grow more explosive, a new bomb dropped. A leaked copy of Rob Reiner's final will surfaced online, and within hours it was everywhere. What people saw inside that document didn't just surprise them, it enraged them. According to the leak, Rob had made a decision that almost no one saw coming. 70% of his estimated $200 million fortune had been left to Nick Reiner. Not split evenly, not carefully balanced, but overwhelmingly concentrated in the hands of the very son now accused of being connected to his parents' deaths. Grief instantly turned into outrage. Comment sections exploded. Talk shows dissected every line. This wasn't just unequal, it felt incomprehensible. For many watching from the outside, this single decision transformed a tragic family loss into a national controversy. And the question on everyone's mind was the same. What could possibly have driven Rob Reiner to make such a choice? As people dug deeper into the numbers, the scale of what Nick stood to receive became even more staggering. This wasn't just cash sitting in a bank account. The inheritance reportedly included controlling rights to Rob Reiner's most valuable film assets, royalties that had been generating money for decades and would likely continue long into the future. We're talking about ownership stakes tied to iconic projects produced under Castle Rock Entertainment, films that shaped generations of moviegoers, along with ongoing revenue streams connected to television syndication that never truly sleeps. On top of that, Nick was set to inherit the family's primary Brentwood mansion, a New England-style home valued somewhere between $10 and $13 million. The irony was impossible to ignore. The same house that symbolized safety, history, and family was now the site of unimaginable loss. To many watching, the fortune itself began to feel heavy, almost cursed, as if every asset carried emotional weight far beyond its dollar value. What truly shifted the tone of the entire story wasn't the money, the properties, or the percentages. It was a short, handwritten message Rob left behind in the will, a note that cut straight through the anger and forced people to pause. In it, he explained that while each of his children had their own path, Nick was the one who would need the opportunities he could provide. Those words landed hard. Suddenly, the will looked less like a business decision and more like a father's last act of protection. Friends of the family revealed that for years, Rob and Michelle had feared losing Nick entirely, watching him cycle through addiction, instability, and moments where he was dangerously close to having nothing left. To Rob, this wasn't favoritism. It was survival. He believed that without a solid foundation, Nick wouldn't make it. And in that moment, the public was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. What looks like injustice from the outside can sometimes be born from fear on the inside. Once the full breakdown of the will became public, the backlash only intensified. Beyond Nick's 70%, the remaining fortune was divided in a way that felt deeply unbalanced to many. Tracy Reiner, Rob's eldest daughter from his first marriage, was left roughly 20% of the estate, while the final 10% was split evenly between Jake and Romy. On paper, the numbers were clear. Emotionally, they were devastating. To Jake and Romy, it felt like punishment for being stable, independent, and low maintenance. They had never asked for help, never caused public concern, never needed rescuing. And now, they were being left with what many saw as scraps compared to the vast control handed to Nick. Old tensions resurfaced instantly. Quiet resentments that had been buried for years suddenly had a reason to speak. Because when a parent chooses unevenly, even with love, the wounds don't stay silent for long. For Jake Reiner, the moment the will became official was the moment grief turned into resolve. On December 19, 2025, while he was away from Los Angeles, an email from the estate management office landed in his inbox. As he scrolled through the figures, his stomach dropped. 70% for Nick, 5% for him, 5% for Romy. According to people close to him, Jake sat frozen, rereading the numbers in disbelief, whispering that this couldn't be real. He had always believed his father would be fair. Furious and shaken, Jake canceled everything, booked the earliest flight back to Los Angeles, and landed the same night determined to fight. Within hours, he walked into the offices of an elite Hollywood law firm and demanded an emergency meeting, making it clear this was no longer just about money. It was about what he believed was a fundamental betrayal of everything his parents had stood for. The moment Jake sat down with attorneys, the strategy became clear. This wasn't going to be an emotional appeal. It was going to be a legal assault. Papers were drafted to immediately freeze Nick's inheritance, invoking California's Slayer statute before any criminal verdict could even be reached. The argument was blunt. If there was credible evidence that Nick had intentionally caused his parents' deaths, then allowing him access to their fortune, even temporarily, would be unconscionable. Civil court, they argued, didn't need certainty beyond a reasonable doubt. It only needed to believe there was a greater than 50% chance that Nick was responsible. With that threshold, the inheritance could be locked down. For Jake and Romy, this wasn't about patience. It was about preventing what they saw as a second injustice, one where a man accused of destroying his family could still profit from it while the case crawled through the system. Just when it seemed the conflict couldn't escalate further, a new front opened. Tracy Reiner, Rob's eldest daughter, refused to stay silent as her younger siblings moved to challenge the will. Within hours of learning about their legal strategy, Tracy assembled her own powerhouse legal team and made her position unmistakably clear. To her, this wasn't about greed, it was about recognition and loyalty. Tracy argued that she had been the steady presence holding the family together through years of tension, illness, and quiet crises, and that her place in the will reflected that reality. As a legally adopted child, she had the same standing as any biological heir, and she was prepared to defend it aggressively. Her attorneys sent a sharply worded letter warning Jake and Romy that any attempt to strip her of her share would be met with full legal resistance. In a single move, the dispute transformed from a sibling disagreement into an all-out three-way war that Hollywood couldn't stop watching. With Tracy officially entering the fight, the situation exploded into full-scale warfare. What had started as a private inheritance dispute now spilled into court filings, leaked letters, and non-stop media coverage. 3 sides, 3 legal teams, and one frozen fortune sitting at the center of it all. Jake and Romy pushed forward, framing their battle as a fight for fairness and moral accountability. Tracy stood firm, insisting that bloodlines didn't define loyalty and that years of emotional labor mattered just as much as genetics. And hovering over everything was Nick, silent, legally vulnerable, and still positioned to inherit the largest share if the law bent in his favor. Courtrooms buzzed, lawyers strategized, and reporters camped outside buildings just to catch a glimpse of movement. To the public, this no longer looked like a family trying to heal. It looked like love had been replaced by litigation, and legacy had become a weapon. As the legal battle intensified, psychologists and behavioral experts began weighing in, shifting the conversation from law to motive. Some pointed to a pattern that felt uncomfortably familiar. Years of rescuing instead of setting boundaries. Love offered without limits. Consequences repeatedly softened out of fear. They argued that when protection replaces accountability, it can quietly distort responsibility. One expert put it bluntly, sometimes love, when it has no guardrails, becomes the root of destruction. That idea unsettled the public. Had Rob and Michelle's endless efforts to save Nick unintentionally taught him that someone would always clean up the aftermath? Or was Nick simply a deeply broken man who never stood a real chance? The story no longer fit neatly into victim and villain. It became a psychological maze where compassion and accountability blurred until no one could clearly say where one ended and the other began. While the family fought in civil court, attention snapped back to Nick's criminal case, and one decision sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Nick hired Alan Jackson, one of the most powerful defense attorneys in Los Angeles, a man known for representing some of the most controversial names in recent history. His fees reportedly run into the thousands per hour, instantly raising eyebrows. How could someone with no stable career and years of personal instability afford a legal dream team like that? Sources close to the case claim the strategy is precise and calculated. Nick's defense will center almost entirely on his mental health. arguing not only for mitigation in sentencing, but for legal protection over his inheritance. If the court accepts that he lacked full mental awareness, the Slayer statute could fail to apply, meaning Nick could legally retain control of the 70% share worth roughly $140 million. To many watching, it felt less like a defense and more like a high-stakes gamble where freedom and fortune were tied together. Then came the theory that chilled even seasoned legal observers. Insiders began suggesting that Nick's moves may not have been reactive at all, but planned long before the tragedy occurred. According to sources familiar with the investigation, some of Nick's legal fees were traced back to assets he already controlled prior to his parents' deaths. Trust funds, savings, and financial arrangements quietly set in place. If true, it raises a terrifying possibility that Nick understood the law well enough to anticipate exactly how mental health defenses and inheritance rules could intersect. In that light, what once looked like chaos starts to resemble calculation. Was Nick a man spiraling out of control, or someone positioning himself for the worst-case scenario in advance? The idea that love, law, and foresight could be twisted into tools for survival or profit left the public speechless. Because if this theory holds, the tragedy may not have been an accident of circumstance, but the end result of desperation meeting opportunity. As the courtroom drama grew darker, attention slowly shifted back to the man at the center of it all, Rob Reiner himself. Long before his name became tied to scandal, Rob Reiner was a Hollywood success story built on decades of discipline, creativity, and relentless work. From his early fame as Meathead on All in the Family to his rise as one of the most respected directors of his generation, Rob crafted films that defined eras and shaped popular culture. Through Castle Rock Entertainment, he helped create a studio powerhouse responsible for timeless classics, each one still generating revenue long after its release. His wealth wasn't accidental. It was layered, strategic, and earned over a lifetime. Add to that his real estate investments in Brentwood, Malibu, and Beverly Hills, and it becomes clear that the $200 million fortune wasn't just money. It was a legacy meant to protect his family long after he was gone. And yet, that same legacy now stood as the centerpiece of a war threatening to erase everything he believed family was supposed to mean. The deeper people looked into the Reiner family story, the more painful the contrast became. Rob Reiner had always lived by one rule: family comes first. Friends described him as present, patient, and emotionally available in a way few Hollywood figures ever managed to be. He showed up. He listened. He protected. And yet, that same devotion now appeared to be the very force pulling his family apart. Quotes Rob had shared privately over the years resurfaced online. Words about never letting money destroy what truly matters. About always protecting one another. Now those words echoed through courtrooms and legal documents like a cruel irony. What once held the family together had become a reminder of everything they were losing. Love, once their greatest strength, had quietly transformed into their battlefield, turning a lifetime of compassion into a tragic cautionary tale no one could ignore. As the dust continues to settle, one truth has become impossible to ignore. This story was never just about a will, or percentages, or even a $200 million fortune. It was about a father's fear, a family's fractures, and the devastating consequences of love without limits. Rob Reiner believed he was protecting his son. He believed money could buy time, stability, maybe even redemption. But instead, that final decision may have planted the seed for the most painful chapter of his family's life. Now, the courts will decide what the law allows, but the public is left wrestling with deeper questions the law can't answer. Was this inheritance an act of compassion or a tragic miscalculation? Can mental illness explain everything, or does it risk becoming a shield against accountability? And when love crosses the line into rescue, does it heal, or does it quietly destroy? One thing is certain. What began as a legacy of success has turned into a cautionary tale that Hollywood won't forget anytime soon. So what do you think? Could this family ever heal from what's been exposed? Or has this scandal gone too far to repair? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the darkest Hollywood dramas, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay with us for the next story.